So Luke, you have worked providing sleep support for elite sport and athletics for a number of years. You completed your PhD at Loughborough that was looking at actually how to translate specific sleep therapies for the context of elite sports. And you've gone to work with some quite high profile names, so Premier League football, international football, rugby, cricket, Formula One, to name a few. Why is sleep so important in elite sports?
So sleep's a relative newcomer to the elite sports scene, and I think because of that, it's been brought high up on sports agendas quite quickly, and everyone recognises the importance and value that sleep can bring to high performance sport. But it's also challenged significantly just by athletes going about their day-to-day lives, the challenges of training, traveling and competing, all challenge different aspects of sleep. So these things tend to clash, both people's attitudes of value, also just how sleep can be challenged.
Yeah. Even with our population of kind of non-sport athletes, we find that when you're under pressure, sleep is often one of the first things that gets troubled. And actually, when you're working in elite sport, which is such a high pressure environment, it must just be so much more the case that sleep becomes an issue.
Yeah, absolutely. Particularly around certain moments of the season. So the way that most professional athletes and non-professional athletes go about their training and the competitions, there's always peak moments where they need to bring their A game and perform. And particularly around those moments, the psychological pressures of just having to perform can feed into sort of those challenges around sleep, particularly from a psychological perspective, but also from a physical perspective, in the way that players need to regenerate and recharge, but also make sure they wake up feeling like they're ready and motivated to perform.
Yeah. So you mentioned performance and you've mentioned recovery. Are there any other aspects that you think sleep is of particular importance in elite sport?
Yeah, I think sleep's fairly unique, not just in sport, but it obviously highly relevant to sport, is that it is quite intrudes every aspect of the athlete's life. So their well-being and their health, in particular mental health, something that really sort of is related to sleep. And I think even more so than ever now, that's on the agendas of many sport support teams, and they're starting to make those connections now between how athletes can just be fit and healthy, let alone to perform. So yeah, it really is a foundation or a pillar of just being an elite athlete and being healthy.
Yeah. And certainly one of the biggest researched areas of sleep is that impact on mental health and the kind of the bidirectional relationship you get with sleep and mental health. So I can see in the pressured environment of sport that this is an issue. And you mentioned that, particularly with the compression that you get in the match season, that sleep is an issue, but also in the run-up, in the training, that being able to get good sleep is really important in trying to meet your training goals, which clearly impacts the rest of the season.
Yeah, absolutely. I think sleep is fundamental to that. It's you have the stresses of training every day, the physical, emotional, even social stresses of just turning up every day and trying to be the best you can be on the training field. That has to be coupled with good rest in order for an athlete to be able to recover and adapt and sort of progress in their physical performance, but also in their ability just to tolerate the sort of the mental load and the social commitments of just being in a team, for example. So it's a fundamental part of it, and without it, you do see incidences of illness. There are some suggestions that it can increase the risk of injury as well. So it plays a fundamental part of that.
And so what would your approach be? Describe your approach if teams wanted sleep support from you.
So my approach is one where I sort of work alongside support staff in particular, where I go into sports and really try to understand the context in which they're trying to approach sleep or even enter sleep. When I say the word enter, it's because it's something that sports find quite novel and new, and it doesn't operate like any other aspect of what they're trying to deliver in terms of a service. So sleep is fundamentally different. Because of that, I work with support teams to really understand what's most appropriate. So understanding the context in which sleep can operate, also the extent to which it might be a problem for a particular team. So that's usually done through like an assessment. So that can be a broad-wide screening through questionnaires or other means of assessment, trying to work out what is the extent of the problem of sleep. And then we sort of start to work with what are the big rocks here we're trying to work with. So where is sleep most challenged in that context? So if it's a sport that's traveling around the world, then obviously things like jet lag and travel management come into play. But it might be that a sport have a very heavily congested fixture list whereby they're competing every few days, and that regularity of getting good quality sleep is fundamentally challenged. So by doing that, we can really pick up those things to target. And then as they're going down to the individual level, whereby working with those who had sleep problems or are asking for help around their sleep can work with one-to-one to really get a gauge of who they are as a sleeper, what's their sleep look like, and how does it feel for them, and how that can benefit them on an individual level in terms of their performance, their health and their well-being.
That's interesting. So it's really acknowledging that not only are sport teams very different, but players are very different. So it is important to understand how these different teams, there's so many different ways that an elite team can work, but understanding where they are with sleep and what their approach is key. And then on to the players themselves and actually understanding them individually. And that's very much how we've always been keen to work. And this goes right down to if there is a specific sleep disorder, that we do obviously all the diagnostic tests in-house and actually have the gold standard treatment. So this is a very comprehensive service. So we have really high quality treatment, but this really is very excellently adapted to the very unique context of elite sport and athletics.
Absolutely, because fundamentally sleep is multidimensional and there's so many different components and elements to it, whereby tackling it in a holistic way is needed. And that's going down from diagnostic sleep disorders, but all through to understanding people's perceptions of what it means to them and the quality of their sleep and how they feel it can deliver to meet their training goals.
Yeah.